The knock came at exactly 11:47 p.m., 3 soft taps, then a pause, then one more, as if the hand outside wasn't sure it deserved an answer. Ethan had been half asleep on the sofa, the television murmuring to itself, his son's school shoes drying by the radiator. He froze. No one knocked this late on Maple Row. Not anymore. Not since his wife died and the street learned the shape of his grief. Another knock. Firmer this time. He stood, heart ticking louder than the clock on the wall, and crossed the hall. Through the frosted glass, a shadow shifted, small, unsteady. He opened the door an inch. A woman stood there, drenched. Rain threaded down her hair, darkened her coat, pooled at her feet. She looked younger than he expected, though exhaustion had carved lines beneath her eyes. In her arms, wrapped tight against her chest, was a child, sleeping or pretending to be. "I'm sorry," she said quickly, breathless. "I know it's late. My phone's dead. The buses stopped. I saw your light." Ethan glanced up and down the street. Empty. The rain stitched the darkness shut. "I can't," he began, then stopped. The child stirred, a small sound like a hiccup, and the woman flinched as if struck. "Just for the night," she said, the words tumbling over each other. "I'll be gone at dawn. I swear. I won't touch anything. I won't even sleep if you don't want me to. I just need somewhere dry." He should have closed the door. He knew that. He thought of headlines, of warnings, of how the world punished men who mistook pity for sense. He thought of his son asleep upstairs, thumb tucked into the corner of a pillow. And yet, there was something about the way she stood. Not demanding. Not pleading theatrically. Just empty. Like someone who had already used up all her strength getting this far. "Come in," he said, surprising himself. She blinked. Thank you. Thank you." She stepped inside, careful, as if afraid the floor might reject her. Ethan took a towel from the hook and handed it over. She wrapped it around the child first, then herself, apologizing with every movement. "My name's Ethan," he said, more to fill the silence than anything else. "Mara," she replied. "And this is Leo." Upstairs, a floorboard creaked. Ethan stiffened. "I've got a boy too," he said quietly. "Tom. He's 8. Mara's eyes flicked to the staircase. "I understand if you change your mind," she said at once. "Truly. I can go." "No," he said. "Stay." He hesitated. "The spare room's small. But it's warm." She nodded, lips pressed together, and followed him down the hall. As he opened the door, she paused, then met his eyes. "I won't forget this," she said. "What you're doing?" Ethan shrugged, uncomfortable with gratitude. "It's just a night." They settled Leo on the bed without waking him. The child's face, relaxed in sleep, was pale beneath the lamplight, his lashes too long, his breathing shallow. Ethan noticed the faint bruise on Mara's wrist, half hidden by her sleeve, and then forced himself to look away. In the kitchen, he set a kettle on. Mara sat at the table, hands wrapped around the mug when he passed it to her, as if heat were a memory she needed reminding of. "You live alone?" she asked. "Mostly," he said. "My son's here half the week." She nodded, absorbing this. "I used to live near here," she said carefully, "before things went wrong." Ethan didn't ask how. He knew better than to pull at threads that might unravel someone in his kitchen at midnight. The rain softened. The house settled. For a moment, it felt almost normal. Two adults sharing quiet, the way strangers sometimes do when they don't yet know how different their lives are. A sound cut through it. Footsteps. Small ones. "Dad." Tom's voice, sleep-thick, from the hallway. "Who's that?" Ethan stood so fast his chair scraped. "Tom, it's all right, mate. Just a guest. Go back to bed." Tom appeared anyway, hair wild, eyes curious. He took in Mara, then the hallway behind her, then the towel draped over the spare room door. "Is she lost?" he asked. Mara smiled, tentative. "A bit," she said. Tom considered this, then nodded, solemn. "We can help," he said, as if it were obvious. Ethan felt something twist in his chest. Tom padded closer, peered at Leo through the cracked door. "His little," he whispered. "He can sleep with my dinosaur if he wants." "That's kind of you," Mara said, her voice breaking on the last word. They tucked Tom back in, the dinosaur reassigned with great ceremony. When Ethan returned to the kitchen, Mara was standing by the sink, staring out into the dark. "I didn't expect kindness tonight," she said without turning. "I didn't expect to make it this far." "Where were you going?" Ethan asked, before he could stop himself. She looked at him then, really looked, and for the first time he saw fear sharpen into something else, urgency. "Somewhere he couldn't find us," she said. A weight settled between them. Ethan thought of the locked door, the quiet street, the way he'd opened without knowing why. He thought of Tom's room upstairs, of the promise he made every morning when he packed lunches and tied laces and pretended the world was manageable. Outside, a car slowed, tires hissing on wet tarmac, then rolled on. Mara flinched anyway. "I'll be gone early," she said again, too quickly. "Before anyone wakes." Ethan shook his head. "You can stay till it's light." She hesitated. "You don't know what you're risking." He looked at the hallway, at the spare room door, at the place where his life had grown quiet and careful. "Maybe," he said. "But tonight, you're under my roof." Mara opened her mouth to speak when a sound reached them both, a low vibration, distant but unmistakable. A phone, buzzing somewhere in her coat pocket, stubbornly alive. Her face drained of color. "That's not possible," she whispered. The buzzing stopped. Then, a moment later, began again, closer this time, as if whoever was calling knew exactly where to aim the sound. Ethan moved without thinking. He took the coat from the chair, crossed the room, and slipped the phone out. The screen lit his hand with an unfamiliar name and a dozen missed calls. He didn't answer. Instead, he turned the ringer off, set the phone face down on the counter, and met Mara's eyes as the house seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see what kind of man he would be when the protection he'd offered for one night began to mean something far more dangerous. Ethan kept his hand on the phone a second longer than necessary, as if the weight of it might explain what he was feeling. The silence after the buzzing felt louder than the ringing itself. "I'm sorry," Mara said, her voice barely there. "I didn't mean to bring this to your door." "You didn't," Ethan replied. "You knocked. I opened. That part's on me." She studied him, perhaps looking for regret, or fear. If she found either, she didn't comment. Instead, she nodded once, like someone accepting terms she could no longer negotiate. "His name is Daniel," she said. "Leo's father. He wasn't always like this." Ethan had heard that sentence before, in other voices, other kitchens. He didn't interrupt. "When I left," she continued, "he said I wouldn't get far. He said the world would hand me back." Upstairs, the house creaked again, pipes settling, wood adjusting, ordinary sounds that suddenly felt fragile. Ethan glanced towards the stairs, then back at Mara. "He doesn't know where you are," he said, more statement than question. "He knows how to look," she replied. They stood there, neither moving, until the kettle clicked softly, long forgotten, the water cooled past usefulness. Ethan switched it off. "You can sleep," he said. "I'll stay up." "You don't have to." "I know." Mara hesitated, then nodded, exhaustion winning. She moved towards the spare room, stopping at the door as if crossing a border. "If he comes," she said quietly, "I'll leave. Immediately." Ethan met her gaze. "If he comes, we'll deal with it." She searched his face again, and this time something in her expression eased, not hope, exactly, but relief's quieter cousin. She stepped inside and closed the door most of the way, leaving it cracked. The night stretched. Ethan sat at the kitchen table, the phone between his palms like a live thing. He didn't check it again. He didn't need to. He imagined the man on the other end, anger sharpened by certainty, convinced the world owed him obedience. Men like that always believed doors would open eventually. At 1:30, headlights swept briefly across the front wall. Ethan's spine went rigid. The light passed. A car continued down the road. He exhaled slowly. At 2, the rain stopped altogether. At 3, Tom padded down the stairs in socks, clutching his dinosaur. "Dad," he whispered. "I had a bad dream." Ethan scooped him up without a word and carried him back to bed. Tom's arms looped around his neck. "Is the lady still here?" Tom murmured. "Yes." "Good," Tom said. She looked sad. Ethan smoothed his hair. "Go to sleep." Tom obeyed, the way children do when they feel safe enough to let go. Back downstairs, Ethan noticed the coat still draped over the chair, water dried into darker patches. He lifted it, felt the weight of it, and found a folded piece of paper in the pocket beneath the phone. A note, written in a careful hand. If you're reading this, I didn't know how to ask you to trust me out loud. Thank you for tonight. No matter what happens next. Ethan folded it back, returned it to the pocket, and set the coat aside. Just before dawn, a sound reached him, soft, deliberate footsteps on gravel. Not the street. The front path. Ethan stood, every sense alert, and moved to the door without turning on the light. Through the glass, a shape resolved, a man, tall, shoulders squared, standing far too close for comfort. Another knock. Louder this time. Confident. Ethan did not open the door. The knock came again, then a third time, the politeness thinning. I know you're in there, a voice called, calm and certain. She always needs help. She always finds someone to play hero. Ethan felt anger rise, cold and steady. He thought of Mara asleep down the hall, of Leo's small body curled into borrowed warmth, of Tom upstairs with his dinosaur. This isn't your house, the voice continued. Open the door. Ethan spoke without raising his voice. Leave. A pause. Then a laugh, soft and incredulous. You don't understand what you're involving yourself in. I understand enough, Ethan said. Go. Another pause. Footsteps shifted. Ethan imagined the man weighing options, measuring risk. The street was still empty, the sky only just beginning to pale. You can't protect her forever, the man said. Ethan leaned closer to the door. No, he replied. But I can protect her tonight. Silence stretched again. Long enough that Ethan wondered if the man had gone. Then footsteps retreated, slower than they'd arrived, fading back into the street. Ethan didn't move for several minutes. When he finally did, it was to lock the door again, check the windows, and sit back down, his hands shaking now that the danger had pulled away. The spare room door creaked open. Mara stood there, pale, eyes wide. I heard him. Ethan nodded. His gun. For now. She pressed a hand to her mouth, breath hitching. I'm so sorry. I never wanted this. I know, he said. The first light of morning slipped through the curtains, soft and uncertain. Somewhere upstairs, Tom stirred in his sleep. In the spare room, Leo murmured and turned over. Mara looked at Ethan, really looked at him, and something unspoken passed between them, an understanding forged not by time, but by choice. When the sun's fully up, she said, we'll leave. Ethan didn't answer right away. He watched the light grow, watched the house return to itself, watched the night loosen its grip. We'll talk, he said finally. Mara nodded, and for the first time since she'd knocked on his door, she allowed herself to believe that talking, really talking, might change the shape of what came next. They sat at the kitchen table as the light strengthened, neither quite ready to move. The clock ticked loud enough to mark the seconds they'd borrowed from something bigger than themselves. Ethan poured fresh water into the kettle, the ordinary motion steadying his hands. You don't have to leave immediately, he said, keeping his tone level. Tom wakes around 7. He'll want cereal and questions. A faint, grateful smile crossed Mara's face. Leo wakes early too. He gets confused in new places. Then we'll keep it simple, Ethan said. Toast. Quiet voices. She nodded, and for a moment they were just two parents trading logistics, the language of survival softened by habit. When Leo padded into the kitchen, hair flattened on one side, he blinked at Ethan as if measuring him against sleep. Is it morning? He asked. Nearly, Ethan replied. You can sit here. Leo climbed onto a chair, feet swinging. Tom appeared a moment later, dinosaur tucked under his arm, eyes widening when he saw Leo. You can use the blue bowl, Tom offered immediately. It doesn't spill. Leo considered this with great seriousness, then nodded. Okay. The boys ate together in companionable silence, crumbs dotting the table, the world narrowing to milk rings and toast crusts. Mara watched them with something like disbelief, as if the scene were fragile and might vanish if she blinked too hard. I'll make some calls today, Ethan said quietly, leaning closer to her. Not the police, unless you want that. But people I trust. There are ways to buy time. Mara's fingers tightened around her mug. Time is all I need. By mid-morning, the street had filled with the low noise of life, engines starting, doors opening, a dog barking 3 houses down. Ethan stood by the window longer than necessary, scanning faces, memorizing patterns. The man hadn't returned.
That didn't mean much.
When the boys settled on the living room floor with pencils and paper, Mara followed Ethan to the hallway, voice low.
He'll try again, she said.
If not today, then soon.
Then we won't make it easy, Ethan replied. He paused. There's a place I can take you. Not far. Quiet.
Her eyes searched his. Why are you doing this?
He didn't answer right away.
He thought of the nights after his wife died, how neighbors had brought casseroles and sympathy and then drifted back to their lives, leaving him to learn the weight of ordinary days alone.
He thought of the door he'd opened without knowing why.
Because I know what it's like to need one good decision, he said.
They moved with care after that.
Bags packed lightly.
Curtains half drawn.
Ethan checked the street again before stepping outside. The air smelled washed clean, as if the night had scrubbed itself away.
The drive was short and quiet.
Leo slept almost immediately, cheek pressed to the window. Tom watched the road, alert in a way Ethan didn't recognize until he did. Children learned vigilance faster than adults admitted. The house Ethan brought them to sat back from the lane, hedged and unremarkable. He unlocked the door and ushered them in, closing it softly behind them. Inside, it was spare but warm, the kind of place meant for waiting. You can stay here, he said. As long as you need.
Mara swallowed.
I don't know how to repay you.
Don't, Ethan replied.
They settled again, the day unfolding in small, careful movements.
At noon, Ethan's phone buzzed. He stepped into the hall to answer, lowering his voice.
When he returned, his expression had shifted, not fear, but focus.
He's been asking around, he said quietly.
At the station. At the hospital.
Mara closed her eyes. I knew it.
He hasn't found you, Ethan continued.
Not yet. The afternoon wore on. Shadows lengthened.
The boys built a fort from cushions, declared it a castle with strict rules about who could enter. Laughter slipped through the rooms like a borrowed gift. As evening approached, Ethan stepped outside to make another call. He didn't see the car at first, parked further down the lane, engine off, windows dark. He noticed the way the air seemed to tighten, the way his instincts flared without proof. The driver's door opened. Ethan moved back inside without running, closing the door behind him. We need to be ready, he said softly.
Mara's face went white.
She reached for Leo, pulling him close. Tom looked between the adults, confusion sharpening into something else.
What's happening? He asked.
Ethan crouched in front of him. Nothing you need to fix, he said gently. Just stay close to me. A knock sounded, not loud, but deliberate. Ethan stood, every muscle awake. He took a step toward the door, then another, the room holding its breath around him. He placed his hand on the lock, feeling the solid certainty of it beneath his palm. Ethan, Mara whispered.
He didn't turn.
I'm here, he said, not to her, but to the house itself, to the promise he'd made the night before without realizing it would be tested this soon. The knock came again, closer than before, and this time Ethan could hear the faint scrape of shoes on stone, the impatience in the rhythm. He stayed where he was, listening, weighing, readying himself for whatever choice would come next, knowing that the night he'd meant to give away had stretched into something far more demanding, and far more human, than he'd ever planned. Ethan lifted a finger to his lips, signaling for quiet, and edged toward the front window instead of the door. He parted the curtain just enough to see the lane. The same dark car sat where it had been, angled like a thought left unfinished. A figure stood near the gate now, head turned as if listening to the house breathe. Another knock, firmer. Ethan, the man called, voice smooth, rehearsed. We can do this without scaring the children. The use of his name tightened something in Ethan's chest.
He glanced back at the living room.
Tom had pulled Leo into the cushion fort, both boys peering out through a gap like sentries. Mara stood behind them, one hand braced against the wall, the other pressed to her mouth. Ethan stepped away from the door and spoke through it, keeping his tone steady. You don't have permission to be here.
A pause.
The man laughed softly. Permission is a flexible thing. Ethan moved to the hallway cupboard and took out a torch, flicking it on and off once, then setting it on the side. He reached for his phone, not to dial, but to hold, something solid, something he could use if needed. Daniel, he said, choosing the name carefully.
Leave. Now.
Silence stretched, thin and sharp. Then the footsteps shifted again, closer to the door. Ethan felt the boy's eyes on him, felt the way the room leaned toward his decision. I know you think you're doing the right thing, Daniel said. She has a way of making men feel useful.
Ethan's jaw tightened.
This conversation is over.
The handle rattled once.
Not a test, an assertion.
Mara gasped.
Ethan turned just enough to meet her eyes and shook his head, a small, firm motion. He moved the boys behind the sofa, crouching with them for a heartbeat.
Listen to me, he whispered.
If I say run, you go to the back room and stay there.
I'll come get you. Tom nodded, swallowing hard.
Leo clutched the dinosaur with both hands, eyes wide but dry. Ethan stood again and stepped back to the door.
I've called someone, he said, a calculated lie.
You don't want to be here when they arrive. Outside, Daniel exhaled slowly, as if weighing odds. You're bluffing. Try me. A sound drifted from the lane. A distant engine, someone passing through without slowing. Daniel's shadow shifted, retreating half a step.
Ethan didn't relax.
He knew better than to mistake movement for surrender. Open the door, Daniel said, voice lower now. We can talk like adults.
We are talking, Ethan replied.
Through a closed door.
Another long pause. The handle didn't move again.
Instead, there was the scrape of shoes backing away, the crunch of gravel. Ethan waited, counting breaths, until the sound faded into the hedges.
He didn't unlock the door. He didn't move.
When he finally turned, Mara was shaking. He crossed the room in 2 strides and steadied her with a hand on her shoulder.
He'll come back, she whispered.
Maybe, Ethan said. But not like this. They sat together on the floor, backs against the sofa, the boys tucked between them.
Time passed in careful inches.
The light outside softened toward evening again, the day folding back on itself. At dusk, Ethan's phone vibrated, once, twice. He read the message and felt a measured calm replace the edge in his chest.
Help's close, he said quietly.
Mara closed her eyes, relief and fear tangling in her breath. I never wanted anyone else to pay for my mistakes.
Ethan shook his head.
Protecting your child isn't a mistake. Another sound reached them. Tires, closer this time, stopping at the gate. Ethan stood, heart thudding, and moved to the window.
A different car now. Official lines. Purpose in the way it parked. He opened the door before the knock.
A woman in a plain coat stood there, badge half hidden, eyes sharp and kind all at once. Mr. Hale?
Ethan nodded.
Thank you for coming. Behind him, Mara pressed Leo's face into her shoulder. Tom leaned forward, curiosity fighting fear. The woman stepped inside, voice low. We'll need a statement, she said. And then we'll make sure you're not alone tonight. The house exhaled. Later, after the woman left and the lane settled again, they ate quietly, the boys finally tiring, the day catching up with them all at once. Ethan carried Tom to bed and tucked the dinosaur under his arm. In the spare room, Mara laid Leo down and smoothed his hair until his breathing evened. In the kitchen, the kettle clicked on and off, forgotten again. I should go tomorrow, Mara said, staring into her mug. Disappear properly. Ethan leaned against the counter. You won't do it alone. She looked up, surprised. I don't want to pull you deeper into this. I'm already here, he said simply. The night returned, gentler than before, but no less watchful. Outside, somewhere beyond the hedges, a car door closed. Ethan moved to the window again, listening, memorizing the quiet. Behind him, Mara stood, uncertainty and gratitude warring in her eyes. If this changes your life. It already has, he said. A faint sound touched the glass, too soft to place. Ethan didn't move away from the window. He stayed there, measuring the dark, ready for the next choice, knowing that protection was never a single act, but a series of moments that asked the same question again and again, each time a little harder to answer. Morning arrived without ceremony, pale and careful, as if it knew what the house had survived. Ethan stood at the window long after the sky had fully lightened, watching the lane breathe back into normalcy, joggers passing, a delivery van slowing, the ordinary reclaiming its place. Behind him, the kettle finally boiled all the way through. Mara joined him, quiet, holding a mug she hadn't yet tasted. For the first time since she'd knocked on his door, her shoulders lowered, just a fraction. They said he won't come near us again, she said. Not after last night. Ethan nodded. He believes in control. Losing it publicly rattles men like him. She absorbed that, then looked toward the hallway where the boys slept. I don't know how to thank you. You already have, Ethan replied. You trusted me. They let the silence settle, not heavy now, but earned. The kind that comes after a storm when you realize the roof held. By mid-morning, arrangements were made.
A safe place farther north.
New routines. New names if necessary. The words sounded unreal, like something from another life, but Mara listened with focus, asking questions, planning steps. She was not broken, Ethan realized, only bruised.
And bruises healed.
When Tom woke, he padded into the kitchen and stopped short when he saw Mara standing there, sunlight catching in her hair. Are you staying? He asked, hopeful and unguarded.
Mara crouched to his height. Not here, she said gently.
But somewhere safe.
Tom considered this. That's okay, he said at last.
As long as Leo's okay. Leo appeared behind her then, rubbing his eyes.
Do we have toast? He asked. Tom grinned.
The blue bowl doesn't spill. They ate together one last time, the boys chattering now, the fear dulled into something distant. Ethan watched Mara watch them, and saw a future trying to take shape in her gaze.
At the door, bags packed light again, Mara paused. You opened your door for one night, she said softly. And you gave us a way out.
Ethan shook his head. I gave you a pause. You did the rest. She hesitated, then reached for him. Just a brief, careful embrace, gratitude pressed into the space between breaths. If the world ever lets me repay this, she said, I will. Ethan smiled, small but certain. Just live well. The car disappeared down the lane, and the house fell quiet again. Not the hollow quiet of loss, but the steady kind that holds memory without aching. That evening, Ethan tucked Tom into bed. The dinosaur was placed precisely, guarding the edge of the pillow.
Dad, Tom said, drowsy.
You were brave. Ethan smoothed his hair. Sometimes bravery is just not closing the door.
Tom nodded, satisfied, and drifted off.
Downstairs, Ethan sat alone, the events of the last days settling into him like layers.
He understood now that protection wasn't about strength or certainty. It was about choosing compassion when fear offered easier answers. Weeks passed.
A postcard arrived one afternoon, edges worn from travel. No return address. Just a simple message. We're safe.
Leo sleeps through the night now.
I think I do too.
Thank you for the night that changed everything.
M. Ethan placed it on the mantel, where the light could reach it. Life moved forward. School runs. Work deadlines. Quiet dinners. Yet something in him had shifted, an openness he hadn't realized grief had closed.
He found himself noticing people more. Pausing longer. Leaving lights on.
One rainy evening, months later, as Ethan washed dishes and Tom did homework at the table, a knock came at the door. 3 soft taps.
A pause. Then one more. Ethan froze. Tom looked up. Dad.
Ethan wiped his hands, heart steady this time, and crossed the hall.
He opened the door.
A woman stood there, different coat, lighter eyes, a calm he hadn't seen before. Beside her, a little boy clutched a familiar blue bowl.
Mara smiled. I said I'd come back, she said.
Not because we need saving. Just because some doors deserve to be knocked on again. Ethan stepped aside without a word, the house opening to them as naturally as breathing.
Because some nights don't end when the danger passes.
Some nights become beginnings.